dedication and commitment to the meeting. Their presence over this week was noted and their contributions were appreciated. For this 50th regular meeting, I will go into who we welcome, but I want to thank all those who were involved, from our local committee here, headed by our Cabinet Secretary, our Foreign Minister who led the Foreign Service here in St. Kitts and Nevis, Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, and all others who were directly involved with making sure that this was possible. So from the 50th regular meeting, we welcome the following special guests. First one, His Excellency Adel bin Ahmad Al-Jubeir, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, member of the Council of Ministers and Climate Envoy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Minister of State outlined current partnerships with individual CARICOM member states and reiterated his nation's commitment to regional development. He noted that the objective of his government was to advance collaborative frameworks to achieve sustained development. We also welcome His Excellency Dr. George Elombi, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Afrexim Bank. Dr. Elombi underscored his commitment to executing and accelerating agreed programs within the region and announced the increase of Afrexim Bank's global limit for CARICOM initiatives from US $3 billion to US $5 billion. We also welcome His Excellency Marco Rubio, Secretary of State of the United States. Secretary Rubio noted his administration's objective of reinvigorating traditional relationships in the Western Hemisphere as both share common opportunities and challenges. He observed that there is already a long-standing partnership between the U.S. and CARICOM states in responding to shared challenges. Her Excellency Noura bint Mohammed Al-Kabi, Minister of State, Foreign Affairs, United Arab Emirates. The Minister of State expressed her nation's commitment to partnerships supported by structured mechanisms which will unleash long-term opportunities, including in the digital economy, water security, and climate resilience. And our last special guest, the Honorable Shirley Battre, who Commonwealth Secretary General. The Secretary General underscored the organization's commitment to supporting the current and emerging goals of its constituents. She commended the region for its strong, principled, and consistent advocacy and applauded efforts to deepen the CSME, food and nutrition security, and citizen security. In the margins of the meeting, as I continue, the following critical bodies of the community convened. 16th Special Meeting of the Community Council was convened and chaired by Foreign Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. 25th Special Meeting of the Council of Foreign and Community Relations. 20th Meeting of CARICOM Committee of Ambassadors. The deliberations of these groups were critical to achieving the overall meeting's outcomes. The 50th regular meeting deliberated on the following critical issues: CARICOM single market and economy. Heads of government approved recommendations for the inclusion of approved categories of aviation personnel, aircraft maintenance engineers, professional pilots, air traffic controllers, flight operations officers, and the additional professions in the category of aviation personnel. Reparations. Heads of government requested the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations to review and advise on the revised CARICOM 10-point plan for reparations, a manifesto, as well as on the priority activities for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting scheduled for Antigua and Barbuda in November and other strategic meetings in 2026. We also looked at UWI indigenization process. Heads of government welcomed the report on the progress of the indigenization of the University of the West Indies and endorsed supplanting the Royal Charter with a treaty signed and ratified by CARICOM member states. The proposed University of the West Indies by anchoring it within a CARICOM treaty framework while preserving the autonomy, governance, and academic freedom that were characteristic features of the Royal Charter. Heads of government expressed their appreciation to Professor Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor, for leading the process. The situation in Haiti. Heads of government received an update from the Eminent Persons Group, EPG, on the status of recent political developments in Haiti and on the security and humanitarian situation. They expressed their deep appreciation for the government of Kenya for its unhesitating willingness to take on leadership of the Multinational Security Support Mission, the MSS, which has now transitioned to the Gang Suppression Force, GSF, authorized by Resolution 2793. They commended the Eminent Persons Group, EPG, for their wise and strategic facilitatory role on the CARICOM's good offices at the time. The conference reiterated CARICOM's firm commitment to the restoration of peace and stability in Haiti and expressed support for the framework for improving security and holding of elections put forward by the new Prime Minister of Haiti. Regional security. Heads of government commended the high-level representative on law and criminal justice on his fourth report on regional security. They noted the progress made on drafting model legislation and policy papers on criminal justice and legislative reform. They welcomed the offer from the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, to work with CARICOM to expand and implement a police record management information system. Finance and governance. Heads of government agreed to establish a committee comprising of Honorable Miamor Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister Dominica, His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali, President Guyana, and Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, to review the governance and financing of the community. Border issues. Guatemala, Belize, and Belize, Honduras. Heads of government received an update on the Guatemala, Belize, and Belize, Honduras cases before the International Court of Justice. They commended the parties for seeking a peaceful resolution to all legal claims against Belize's land and insular territories and any maritime areas pertaining to those territories. They called on all parties to abide by and implement the ICJ decisions when delivered. Heads of government reaffirmed their steadfast support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security of Belize. Guyana, Venezuela. Heads of government received an update on the latest developments regarding the Guyana-Venezuela controversy pending before the International Court of Justice. Heads of government reaffirmed their full support for the ongoing judicial process as the means for resolving the controversy peacefully, finally, and in accordance with international law, and reiterated their unequivocal and unwavering support for the maintenance of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana. Implementation of full free movement protocol implementation of full free movement protocol on enhanced cooperation. Barbados, Belize, Dominica, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines reported that free movement among themselves successfully commenced on 1st October 2025, and that they continue to strengthen the necessary administrative, legislative, and institutional frameworks identified. Proposed amendment to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas on the CARICOM rules of origin. Heads of government adopted the draft protocol to allow an amendment on Schedule 1 of the revised treaty to be implemented by a decision of the Council for Trade and Economic Development, quoted. Schedule 1 contains the list of conditions to be complied with as provided under Article 84 of the treaty and the rules regarding community origin. CARICOM Industrial Policy. Heads of government endorsed the draft CARICOM Industrial Policy and Strategy Framework, which is intended to provide a framework for a coordinated approach to industrial development across the region. They reaffirmed the need to foster market-led, internationally competitive and sustainable industries that promote both economic and social development across member states. External trade. Heads of government received a report on preparations for the 14th Ministerial Conference of the WTO, MC14, scheduled to take place in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Hope I pronounced that appropriately. From 26 to 29 March 2026. The report outlined the key issues expected to drive discussions and considerations to guide member states' engagement during the conference. Following or continuing forthcoming summits involving the community, CARICOM will utilize upcoming summits in 2026 to advance critical regional priorities, including the 28th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, Shogam, Antigua and Barbuda, 1st to 4th November 2026, 5th CARICOM Mexico Summit. And anything else to be added will be updated accordingly. Now, in closing, to conclude this 50th regular meeting was a resounding success in many ways. We had full participation from every state and associate member, and we were able to deliberate and finalize a number of issues. Coordinating meetings of this nature is no easy task. I therefore would like to express my appreciation once again to the Secretary General, Dr. Barnett, who led the coordination efforts on the CARICOM Secretariat side. She and her team at the CARICOM Secretariat have been working hard over the last few months to ensure that this would be a success. Similarly, the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the local organizing committee headed by Cabinet Secretary Dr. Marcus Natter and my permanent secretary, and also to express sincere thanks to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Foreign Service of St. Kitts and Nevis. The people of St. Kitts and Nevis in general for showing our visitors their warmth and kindness over these days. Delegates for their participation and dedication to the process. Members of the diplomatic corps, support teams, protocol officers, liaisons, security forces, media teams, service providers, the Marriott, St. Kitts, AV teams, technical support teams, members of the media for staying throughout the period and covering the meeting. And anyone else who I might have omitted, it is not deliberate. Of course, whatever role you play, even if you only want to make sure that these tables were arranged properly, we certainly appreciate your support in making this a success. I want to thank all of you, and that brings to an end my written statement on the conclusion of this meeting. And now I will turn it back over to our moderator.
Thank you, Chair, for a very concise update on our meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now opening the floor for questions from the media. We do have some listeners online, some members of the media online. So we will take 2 from the room and then 2 online. We ask that you honor the protocols in place for our meeting. We will have 1 question each, and if there is extra time, then you will be allowed to ask another question. When recognized, please state your name and media house. As usual, we start with the media from the host country. If we have a question from St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.
Yes, good afternoon all. Prime Minister, just to ask 2 quick questions, that is Prime Minister Drew, the chair, and also one to the other heads at the table. Prime Minister, you mentioned, of course, that it was important for St. Kitts and Nevis to have a conference that really drive home the effort of action. How would you say, based on the deliberations and the discussions that took place during this 50th meeting, in terms of the outcomes, how much action would you say that the people of the Caribbean can look forward to based on the outcomes of these meetings, and particularly in reference to some issues such as migration. Also, you mentioned, of course, that there was the free movement between the 4 countries already. Did that provide a model as to how a larger framework can work within CARICOM itself? And also to the other heads at the table. Reference was made, of course, by the Prime Minister, the current chair, to visit each country prior to the start of the conference. Can you speak to the impact of that outreach by the chair? And do you think it would have had an impact on the deliberations that took place here in Bastille?
Thank you very much. I will answer the first part and then pass it on to my colleagues. This was a conference of action. And one of the things that we did is that we set it up in such a way so that the heads could have spent a larger amount of time together dealing with the most critical issues affecting the community. And as a result of that, you would see the number of outcomes that we would have had that would have direct impact, positive impact on the community and our people within this region, of course. So for the many things that I mentioned, and I would not reiterate them, but it's obvious that a lot of work was covered, a lot of grounds were covered, and a lot of things were achieved that as they are implemented, we would recognize how important that is. I think if you were to look at, for example, the matter with University of the West Indies, something that I think, moving step closer to indigenize that institution, that is a significant achievement for the region, I think, in my own estimation. Looking at the matter of Haiti and having the new Prime Minister of Haiti here and hearing his presentation, and from the EPG group, that's the Eminent Persons Group, and their report on the advancement of things in Haiti and leading, of course, thinking about having elections, somewhat later this year, with concrete achievements being seen, I think that is critically important and would show how CARICOM would have contributed significantly to that. And so I can go one by one to show all the other things that we would have achieved, but I would say one of the things that we would have achieved was to get all of the heads of the full members here, along with 90+% of the associate members, so that we could have discussed and talked about those challenging issues that any integration movement would face. So I think that we would have had a significant amount of action, of course, of being more united than we came, if there was a question about our togetherness at all. So I'm very pleased with the outcome, and I can go on and on, but I would leave it there unless there's something specifically asked. And with respect to the travel, I had been to an OECS meeting in St. Lucia just to clear before he answered, just shortly before. And so when I went back to the region, he had traveled to Barbados for the inauguration. And so I didn't get to see him exactly before, but probably a week before I had been in St. Lucia, where I would have discussed the CARICOM meeting as well. So I turn it over to my colleagues to answer the second part about my visit to them.
I thought it was a very thoughtful action on the part of the chairman to make a mission of speaking with colleague heads across the region personally. There was a sense reflected in several editorials and articles across the region regarding the unity of the region and the functioning of the regional mechanisms. And I believe that having done this mission and having met directly with the heads and would have had an opportunity to discuss in person all the issues that existed, it set the tone for this meeting. And you would see that the level of cordiality was very much pronounced. All the heads attended, and at our retreat, we had very good discussions. So I think this strategy was very useful and a very thoughtful one.
Well, St. Lucia is generally a welcoming country, and to welcome the Prime Minister of St. Kitts, we welcome him together with the Prime Ministers of Dominica, Grenada, and St. Vincent. Our discussions were very fruitful because the OECS as a unit normally works together on several issues. And the very fact that, as the Prime Minister of Jamaica says, all heads were here, shows that his visit laid the groundwork for our involvement. And there were some other issues, some of the minor things that also showed the unity among leaders. All of us wore the same shirt. That is an example where we, even in terms of our dress, and the very fact that we could do that and have some light moments among the serious discussions was an indication that the Prime Minister had campaigned successfully. And I wish him a very successful campaign in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Ministers. We'll now take a question from this side of the room, recognizing Guardian Media.
Good afternoon, everyone. Doris Polo, Guardian Media from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the head table would have referenced the unity that was seen, acknowledging that leaders even dressed alike ahead of the retreat. But some leaders were actually absent, including Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar. And of course, at the opening ceremony, she was very critical of CARICOM as an organization, in fact, referencing that she sent a letter to the Secretariat and did not receive a response. That contradicts, to some extent, conversations around unity. What is the response to that?
Thank you very much for your question. Let me premise my answer by saying my objective and our objective is to build bridges and not light fires. And so we seek to look for opportunities of how we can build bridges. As I said initially, I would have said in other fora, that CARICOM is an integration movement of sovereign nations. And at any given point, you will hear differences of opinion on particular issues. I look at those as opportunities to strengthen the organization and to advance the organization, because those things will always happen. If you have an integration movement and there are no differences of opinion, I will question if the people are really committed to the movement. Because as I've said before, if you sit with yourself, you might disagree with yourself after 5 minutes of sitting silently with yourself. So there would be differences. There would be, and these are the things that we have to work through. But what happens is not, what is important is not the differences, because they necessarily have to happen. It's how we address the differences. Are we mature enough to understand that we'll have differences, to know that there will be difficulties, but so committed that we would work through them for the betterment of the organization, even with those differences, which we would expect and would necessarily happen, we were all still able to come and sit and sort to work through those differences. I had the opportunity to visit the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago before this. She was very gracious to me. She welcomed me with open arms. She took me to her office. She and I sat, we talked. She took me to Parliament. She made an excellent statement on CARICOM and how we commitment. Of course, just like everybody else, you might need to have some things work through. And then, so she was very gracious in all of that. So I would say that the organization is strong, the organization is together, and despite our differences, but I wouldn't say despite our differences. I would say, as the Prime Minister from Jamaica said, maybe our real strength is the fact that we have differences and we work through them as an organization. So I would say that definitely we are united, we are strong, irrespective of our differences. And we do not take our differences lightly. We work through our differences, and we'll continue to work through them as a community.
I suspect the conventional view of the Caribbean community would be that the regional institutions function in unison, and that there is commonality of purpose amongst all the countries and all the leaders. But I think members of the community should come to the understanding that we are existing in a different political reality, and that optionality is important. You want to have a wide policy space where persons may take different positions based upon different interests, but that doesn't mean that the organization cannot function. It really means that the organization is far more sophisticated and has far more positions that it can take, that if strategically coordinated, can lead to the greater good and greater benefit of the organization. So I think the conventional unidimensional view on how integration movements should operate does not hold in this current state. And we should get used to it. Our commentators and our intellectuals and so forth should get used to it and guide the public in this way. Nevertheless, that it has been expressed that the organization, CARICOM, is important and it should be united and it should be strong. We here as leaders, we see this, we interpret the importance of this, and therefore we are here to, if for no other reason, show that we are all still supportive of the organization and that we can work with colleagues that have different views. Look, we are all aspiring to get to heaven, but we live here where there is conflict, where there are differences, and we have to get used to it. There's no sanitized view and perspective. This is real politics and real life in which there will be differences of opinion. It is how we come together, committed to the ultimate principles, with respect and deference to each other, and then we come to solutions. And I think that this CARICOM meeting has led us in this way.
Thank you, Prime Ministers. From this side of the room, CMC? Did you have, yes? Did you have?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman Peter Richards, CMC. In your opening statement, and even so far from what we've seen that's been going on since, I have not heard the word hate. I have not heard the word Cuba at all. Is that an omission, deliberate, or is it the mere fact that Cuba is not as important as you would have thought Caribbean people would want to know, given what's happening?
Right. Thank you very much for your question. Let me say that Cuba was discussed at this meeting. Not only was it discussed, I think in my opening statement, I would have mentioned it, and I think in other leaders' opening statement, it was mentioned as well. And just to update you, we have already put out a statement concerning Cuba, and I hope you would have had access to it. I think it should be where Cuba is definitely mentioned, and I think it's out already on CARICOM's website. And I would refer you to that as well. So definitely, we have not only discussed it, but we have put out a statement even before this closing press conference with respect to the situation in Cuba. And so if you were to refer to that statement, you would recognize. So yes, it is in...
You don't mind just telling me a synopsis of what it is?
Right. So basically the synopsis, if I had the statement here, I can refer to it for you. So it says here in the last paragraph, the matter of the challenging situation in Cuba was also discussed. All parties recognized, and this is our meeting with the Secretary of State, all parties recognize that there should be efforts to address the growing humanitarian crisis that's within CARICOM. The Caribbean community, cognizant of its very close relationship with both Cuba and the USA, and mindful of the extent to which the region can be negatively affected, is willing and to participate in any way that will redound to the benefit of the Cuban people while maintaining regional stability. I can go on further to say that the community has taken the decision as well to support humanitarian efforts in Cuba. That I can confirm as well.
Thank you, Chair. We'll now take questions online. The Guardian UK, Natricia Duncan. Your question, please, to the Chair. We are hearing you quite clearly.
Yes, thank you very much. I will comment on the cooperation framework that we are looking at. This is one of the things that was discussed with the Secretary of State. He and I co-hosted the meeting. And we are now in the initial stages of setting this up. We have agreed in principle with respect to it. CARICOM would put together a team of 3 who would then be the team to sit with the team from the United States of America to really flesh out what this framework would look like. So as the statement would have said, this will be a significant, I would say, this is significant in terms of creating that framework to move forward at this particular time to ensure that that strong relationship that exists between the United States and CARICOM continues, but within a framework that would redound to the benefit of both countries. And so the details of that will come after that meeting would have had, and that planning is had as well. So I would say that it's in the very initial stages, but that I can come from what I just mentioned. And therefore, would any other Prime Minister, I think Prime Minister Holness, he told me he's an economist, and he has been very strong on this as well. And then the other part of your question that you would have asked was respect to, I think it was, climate and reparations. Right, so climate and reparations with respect to the community. We looked at reparations, and I think in my opening statement I would have mentioned it, where the next meeting will look at what it is to update on, but we are very strong on reparations still, and so you'll find that in my opening statement with respect to that. On the issue of climate, we also discussed that in our retreat. We are still going to advocate very strongly on the issue of climate change and how it's affecting the Caribbean region. We have to advocate very strongly for ourselves. Look at what happened in Jamaica recently, one of the worst hurricanes ever experienced in the whole region. That can happen to any of us at any given time. Look at what happened in the Grenadines, St. Vincent, Grenada. And therefore, we are living the reality of climate change, and we will continue as a community to advocate for it, to advocate for climate justice, so that it can give us the best opportunity to deal with what we consider to be a serious threat to our community, to our development, and to our advancement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. We'll take another question online from Dennis Chabrol of the Demerara Waves, and then we'll come back to the room with the CBC to my left. Mr. Chabrol, please proceed with your question. Just reminding our media partners, just one question, please, so that as many of you as possible will be able to speak with the Chair, and then if there's adequate time, we'll come back for second questions. Mr. Chabrol.
Thank you very much. I see you direct that one directly to the St. Lucian end with respect to what has taken place. He, of course, would have given an update based on what would have been taking place in that area. And I think a lot of discussions are taking place to really and things that I think needs to be fleshed out still with respect to what has occurred. And I think it would need a little more time to give all of the information surrounding the occurrence of what has taken place. So I would say that that question is a very pertinent and important question, but based on what is happening presently in terms of the gathering of information and looking to see what took place, I think it would need a little bit more time to give a more complete response to the question.
But broadly, does CARICOM support the action?
I think his original question was, did CARICOM support or endorse the United States military action in the Caribbean with regards to illegal drug trade?
Right, you're asking about a question which I sought to answer at this particular time. You mean to St. Lucia? Right, good. Good.
He asked the question to you, and he asked the question whether CARICOM has endorsed.
Right, CARICOM stand on principle to make sure that anything that is done, this or anything, has to follow a particular international law. You're asking that CARICOM, with a CARICOM at this time and the necessary investigation, necessary things are being done to ensure what has happened in the Caribbean. And so getting all of that information, it would ensure that the response given can be a complete and comprehensive response with respect to that. I would say that CARICOM by principle respect laws and all international laws. And for a more complete, which just recently took place, I'm sure that St. Lucia, and I know that St. Lucia and other countries that are being questioned have been going through the various investigations, gathering of information to give a more complete and succinct conversation with respect to the matter.
Thank you, Chair. We'll now take the CBC.
Prime Minister J. Pierre, Crystal Hoyt from CBC Barbados. Prime Minister J. Pierre, you mentioned yesterday your hopes that the issues would not cause fragmentation within CARICOM, especially as it relates to the U.S. and the increased military presence in the Caribbean. And we know that next week, Trinidad and Tobago as well as Guyana are invited to meet with President Trump. Prime Minister Drew, is CARICOM today experiencing an unprecedented level of fragmentation?
Thank you for your question. CARICOM is not experiencing any levels of fragmentation. I think that this meeting demonstrates our commitment to CARICOM as a strong organization. CARICOM does not have a homogeneous, I would say, or a single foreign policy. That is left up to sovereign states. CARICOM might seek to coordinate, but each state, as was mentioned before, has the opportunity to determine what would be its foreign policy agenda. If you look at CARICOM, CARICOM is not a political union, and one has to also understand what CARICOM is about. And so Trinidad and Tobago or any other country being invited to a meeting does not fragment CARICOM at all. As was mentioned before, the fact that different persons within CARICOM or different states within CARICOM can have relationships that span the whole spectrum of relationships in terms of country to country and so forth. That can actually enrich CARICOM, but it does not fracture CARICOM. There is no instance or evidence that this is fracturing CARICOM. Are there some differences? Yes, but fracturing, I think, is a very, very strong word at this particular time.
At what point does collective positioning on major geopolitical issues, especially when it's happening within the region and it's the U.S. military presence and the bombing in the airstrikes in particular, at what point does that override national interests?
I don't know I think every country acts within its national interests at any given point. I don't know if you are referring to something else, but I don't think if anything at all would override anybody's national interests. But I think I come back to the heart of your question. Is CARICOM being fragmented as a result of any of this? Not at all. I think this is giving CARICOM the opportunity to look at these and look for areas in which it can strengthen itself. And these things were discussed at multiple levels, but I can say CARICOM is committed to remaining as a unit, as an entity, as a viable entity for moving the Caribbean community forward, and this is not a sign of fragmentation at all.
Thank you, Chair. We'll now take a question from Stabrook News in Guyana, followed by Z's Broadcasting, then the Miami Herald.
Thank you. And good day. Marcel Thomas from the Stabrook News in Guyana.
What's this called?
The Stabrook News.
Oh, Stabrook. Okay, yes.
I have a follow-up to Peter's question and a substantive question. Chairman Drew, you said that humanitarian aid will be provided to CARICOM. You also said that you're a man of action. To Cuba, sorry. You're a man of action. I wanted to know specifically if you've determined what aid will be provided and how soon that aid is going to be provided. And my substantive question is that there is a view that the U.S. is promoting regime change in Cuba and that CARICOM is participating in this transition. There was a report from the Miami Herald that the grandson of Fidel Castro met here with Secretary of State Rubio on the sidelines of this CARICOM conference. How do you respond?
Well, in the first instance, I can't speak for the Associated Press or Miami Herald. I guess you'll have to ask them about that question. So I think, I'm not in a position to respond to what they have written. And I don't dare think that I am qualified to do such. With respect to Cuba and the humanitarian efforts, we are going to respond on the humanitarian end in short order, within a month. We will give more specifics on it very, very shortly, but within a month, we are going to respond in a significant way to help the humanitarian situation in Cuba. So I think that is on the way, and you'll get more details with respect to it. All right, so to answer succinctly, that would be the response.
But you haven't answered my substantive question on what is your view on CARICOM supporting the U.S.'s purported regime change in Cuba?
You're speaking about purported change and so forth, and those things. I trying to understand the full context of what you speak. You refer to an article that I have not seen or refer to or know the basis of it. So therefore, with that, CARICOM has not involved itself in any discussion of such nature. As such, we are very concerned about the humanitarian situation in Cuba, which I've spoken about, and that is what we are responding to, and within a month you would see exactly what CARICOM would do with respect to that.
And there was no discussion about regime change in Cuba?
Regime change in Cuba with us?
Yes, with CARICOM.
No, we have not discussed that. We have discussed humanitarian matters in Cuba.
Thank you, Chair. Z's Broadcasting.
Good afternoon, Kent Fuentes, ZSAN. Dr. Drew, how happy are you with the discussions that were held on regional security? And based on the fact that we've heard that the Caribbean region is supposed to be a zone of peace.
I would allow also my fellow prime ministers to step in on this time if they want, but I would say that on regional security, I think we are strengthening our coordination with respect to regional security. And the discussions were held on different levels where we talk about countries and their responses. Even in the opening statements, you would have heard different approaches to deal with the security matters. But in terms of coordination and working together to ensure that the Caribbean is as secure as possible, I think that was advanced at this meeting as well. You all in the media, there are challenges. Lots of challenges when it comes to security across the region. I think you all would have seen the level sometimes of violence that would have been taking place across the region. And we are asked to really respond to that. For example, transnational crime, which the Prime Minister of Jamaica speaks to significantly. The movement of all these weapons through the region. Those things were discussed. How can those things be stemmed or be dealt with? So the fact that we discuss it on this level and the fact that we want more coordination among ourselves and moving towards that, I certainly think that there are great opportunities to advance the security situation of the region.
Thank you, Chair. Our final question for this press conference is from the Miami Herald.
Hi, Jacqueline Charles, the Miami Herald, and I'm going to apologize ahead because I need some clarification on a couple of things since this meeting is being closely watched. First of all, on Cuba, Secretary of State Rubio, we are told in his private conversations with you all, basically acknowledged what has been publicly reported, that they are in discussions with Cuba and not to give Cuba false hope. Josefina Vidal was here. She met with several members of Caribbean governments, including your own chairman. Could you please tell us what is your position today as far as outside of the humanitarian framework? Will CARICOM assist in some sort of transitional talk as it relates to Cuba? That's number one. Number two, in your statement that you put out, you said that you guys talk about structural migration. What exactly is this? Is this third-party agreements? And did the travel ban that two of your countries are under and Haiti under full, did this come up in discussions with Secretary of State Rubio, and what did he say? Sorry again. You mentioned team of three in relation to U.S.-Caribbean relations. Who will comprise of these three member individuals? The EPG with Haiti, will that continue? And then finally, associated members. We know that they've been here, they've been lobbying to be full membership. What will that require, and is there a decision on that? Thank you, and I apologize, but I like clarifications.
Yes, thank you very much. I can say, with respect to the matter with Cuba, CARICOM's focus at this time, CARICOM's focus, let me put it that way, is on the humanitarian situation in Cuba. And we are making steps to help to ease those humanitarian efforts, the humanitarian situation in Cuba. And that is what I've said before, and that is what I would stand by even at this point in time. You asked a lot of questions within your time, and I want to congratulate you on your skill. How can you get 5 questions in a minute? You spoke about and I will go through them, the migration matter. I think that really needs to be discussed as well. As you know, a lot of our people move to the United States of America. There are questions on how people move into America, how people overstaying, violating laws. The whole question that you brought up about TCN and so forth. But we're not even going as far as the TCN. What should be a coordinated framework for migratory situations between the United States of America and the Caribbean. We want to sit and discuss that matter. If there are questions that are asked by the United States of America or even by our own people that need to be questioned, that needs to be answered, I think we need to sit in order to discuss and really flesh out those things. So that's on one level, at least having a framework, the opportunity in which we can sit and hammer out those details. And I know you're asking about details, but I will not be able to give you all of those details because those details have not been fleshed out as yet. However, when we speak to it, it is because the intention is to set up that opportunity that there can be discussions that can derive solutions to all of the questions being asked at this particular time. Now, when you spoke about the 3-member team to deal with the cooperation framework that we're talking about with the United States of America, we have not fully determined who the members of the team are, even though some discussions would have been had, but that will be put in place very quickly so that we can start having those discussions with the United States of America so that we can start putting that framework together. You remember the CBI, the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which was set up so many years ago under the Reagan administration. We want to arrive at something even more advanced than that in terms of our cooperation to strengthen not only just the relationship between the United States of America and CARICOM or the Caribbean community, but also to strengthen trade and to see what benefits and so forth can be derived. So there are multiple things that will be described under this framework that it is that we show will take place once this mechanism is put in place and begins to work. With respect to the EPG has done excellent work, even from the perspective of what the Haitians have reported. And so the EPG will continue to do its work in Haiti. And we are hoping that they can go up to the point where Haiti can have free and fair and open democratic elections, which the intention is to have at the end of this year. So yes, the EPG will continue its work with respect to Haiti. So I think I covered most of what you asked. I know you asked a lot.
Associate members. The associate members who want to be full members?
Right. So the associate members who want to be full members, we took that on board as well. There are a number of legal hurdles to cross because, as you know, their sovereign is mostly outside of the Caribbean. For example, the BVI, their sovereign is in Europe, for example. And therefore, there are multiple hurdles to pass with respect to what must be done so that they can be incorporated. So I can say the objective is to have, by the end of March or so, that all of those legal hurdles would have been crossed so that that can be presented to CARICOM during its intersessional meeting to be considered for full membership. So yes, we are advanced in looking at the upgrade, I would say, or the incorporation of associate members to become full members, but of course, premised on these legal hurdles that must be crossed in order to meet the criteria to be incorporated.
The chairman has adequately answered all the questions asked, but my intervention is to amplify one area of specific interest, which is the idea of a structured migration program. Again, conventionally, we think of migration purely from the legal issues, persons who are illegally entering. But there is another dimension of migration which more and more countries in the Caribbean have to pay attention to, and that is the depletion of skills and talent, which are critical to the development of the region. And so whilst there is a direction and a view as to what we need to do to either accept more involuntary returnees or to participate in various programs which the United States would be advocating, we also should be figuring out ways in which we can secure training, secure employment, and secure skills for our economies as well. And so that's the idea behind a structured migration program. Bear in mind that there are elements of structured migration already. Many of our countries do have what we call the farm work program, where our workers are on a structured program. For some of us, we have persons in the hospitality area who work overseas on a structured program. And I think we need to engage the United States and other countries that use our skilled labor in a way that ensures that we can also have the benefit of our skills and talents as well. So that's the idea behind. It's not yet fleshed out in all its details, but we have the idea on the table, and there has been some level of receptivity towards it.
And just a clarification, Mr. Chairman, will the humanitarian aid to Cuba include fuel?
All right, thank you once again for your question. As I say, within a month time, we are looking at when the team come together, these teams will determine what would be the requirement, and within that, we will determine the humanitarian aid that will be offered. At this time, again, the details, as I've mentioned, would come. I know you're seeking the details, and I agree with you. If I were you, I would ask for the details as well. But as I told you, the decision was made to offer humanitarian aid, and now we will start to build out the specifics, and the specifics which will be shared as well with you. As we come to an end, and I want to thank all of you. Yes. Yes, that was the last question.
That was the last question. Over to the chair.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I want to thank all of you, but before I make the closing statement, I will give the Prime Minister from St. Lucia an opportunity to speak about the upcoming CARICOM meeting. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, before I do that, I just want to remind everybody in the region of the threat of climate change, the threat of hurricanes, the threat of changes in climate that can affect us, and the upcoming COP33 scheduled later this year. And it's very important that we maintain unity around the 1.5 degrees centigrade. We accelerate our readiness for loss and damage access. We coordinate our submissions and negotiation positions early. We strengthen our engagement with our partners and keep finance and debt reform at the center of our diplomatic efforts. It's extremely important that the matter of climate change and resilience never be put in the background, because all our discussions, our plans can be literally be wiped off in a matter of hours. So I just thought it's important that we keep that issue at the forefront of our discussions and on our discussions and deliberations. Well, St. Lucia will be hosting the 51st meeting from the 5th to the 8th of July. I want to invite everyone, including my fellow heads. St. Lucia is arguably the nicest country in the region.
I have the last, so I'll respond.
And
you respond on my behalf.
And we have some of the most hospitable people. So I would invite everyone. We're looking forward to receiving you in St. Lucia for the 51st meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It will be July. You give the date?
July 5th to the 8th.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. When you have a region where each leader can claim that their country is the most beautiful on earth, that says that we have a beautiful region. At least we can all agree on that, correct? So I want to thank Prime Minister of St. Lucia and his government, his people, who will be hosting us in July for the 51st regular meeting. Let me wrap up this meeting by saying that I want to thank the press for participating and its questions. Your questions were relevant, and your question is seeking to get the best information that could be had with respect to a number of issues and challenges that are affecting the community. I am not going to pretend here, and I'm sure you're not pretending, that they are not challenges. They are challenges. I've never hid that, and we have never hid that, and we will never, ever hide that. there are challenges. However, coming out of this meeting, acknowledging those challenges, we have worked together to ensure that we can confront them in the best manner possible. The fact that all the full members showed up, the fact that they were part of the discussions and the deliberations, and that significant decisions were reached, showed that there is no fragmentation, but I would say more togetherness, even though there are challenges that we are facing at this particular time. And the CARICOM will continue to work for the well-being of all of the people in the region. All of the leaders are committed to that. We'll continue to work for stability, and we'll continue to work to do our part to make this world a better place. So I want to finally say to all of my heads, all of you, thank you, and continue to enjoy the beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis until you would depart and safe trip out. Thank you very, very much.